May Evelyn Engel go unto God. O God, your ways often mystify us. Yet without you, we would feel cast away in a desolate void. You give us the will to live. You grieve with us and teach us compassion for the suffering. You send your messengers, our friends, who take our hand and walk with us in our sorrow. You lead us from darkness toward the light. We who are destined to die revere the God who keeps us alive. Life and death come from you, and the soul returns to you. We live on too in those we love, surviving in their thoughts and in their deeds. God, we live on in your eternal care. We praise you, O truthful judge. We praise you, O compassionate parent. God gave, God took away. Blessed be the name of God. Again, thank you everyone for coming this afternoon to show your love for the Engel family, for Debbie and Carla, for Evelyn. Just as we begin speaking about her and her life, a reminder and a request to just please make sure your cell phones are off or on silence or in not disturb mode. This coming Shabbat, we'll read Parshat Vayechi, a word which means "and the life of." It's the final portion of the book of Genesis, the first book of the Torah, and it concludes the narrative of our founding ancestors. Both Jacob and Joseph draw their final breaths in this parsha. The majority of the parsha is about Jacob saying goodbye to his children. We look back at some of the events of his life and also at the blessings that he gives his children and the generations after him. The truth is that Jacob's life wasn't an easy one. He was a wrestler. As a second-born child, he truly had to fight with determination, with cunning, with grit, to achieve all that he wanted in life. And even when he is established, when he has that large family and countless flocks, he still struggles to prove himself to his brother and to his family. The result of Jacob's constant striving is to do better. His dedication to God and his family, all of it ultimately pays off. He's able to see his family flourish in the land of Egypt, and he dies knowing that the promises God made to him had been fulfilled, even as he passes that same blessing on to his children and grandchildren. In hearing and learning about the life of Evelyn Engel, the characteristics that define Jacob's life, determination, dedication, in her case a matriarch, and so much more, were so evident in her life that as we look back on the life of this incredible woman, we can see the ways that she helped define family, Judaism, and community for generations to come. Born and raised on a dairy farm as one of 5 children, Evelyn knew from an early age that what hard work looked like and how it can contribute to a better life. It is in part what drove her to be an exceptional nurse, a profession she loved. Though, as Debbie and Carla said, had she lived a generation later, she probably would have been Dr. Evelyn Engel. But she loved the fact that she was an RN. As an RN, she was able to help heal people, to care for them. She began her career working for the Roper Hospital, before moving to home health care. She was exactly that, a healer. She stood out in her generation for so many reasons, including that she worked throughout her life. She always knew that she would find a way to balance a career, a family, a social life, a religious life, and she did. She did all of that with more pride, joy, and devotion than most others. While she was studying to become a nurse, fate and love smiled upon Evelyn. While she was living in a boarding house and sharing meals in a common dining room, Evelyn met Herb. This meeting was life-altering. Not just because their relationship began to blossom, but because it led these 2 souls to discover and wrestle with the values they wanted to guide their life by. For Herb, there was one value above all else: Judaism. That Judaism was not the religion that Evelyn was born into is easy to overlook because of the life she lived. When she and Herb first met, things were different, though. After years of dating and talking, of falling in love and understanding that they were destined to be together, that they were for one another, Evelyn knew that to choose Herb also meant to choose Judaism. She spent hours each week driving back and forth to Jacksonville, the only place that she could find a rabbi willing to make that commitment with her towards conversion. But she made that commitment, that promise, not just to herself, not just to her, but to herself and to her future family. She wasn't just choosing Judaism for the person she was marrying. She was choosing it for herself as well. In doing so, she became a true pillar of the Emanu-El and Charleston Jewish communities. She was deeply involved in the Sisterhood, in Hadassah, the Council of Jewish Women, Women's League, the Chevre Kadisha. She worked in the kitchen making cakes to celebrate birthdays and anniversaries on Shabbat. She fervently supported the purchasing of Israel bonds for nearly 15 years. 15 years. If you received an Emanu-Elogram celebrating a simcha, some moment, milestone in your life, every single one of those letters came in the same handwriting, Evelyn's. She was a Minyan regular, and in her later years, after she had suffered some health setbacks and working tirelessly to heal, to get better, she began driving others to synagogue, to shul each Shabbat, began with Dutch Cohen of blessed memory and then expanded to others who were in need, to get them there, to be part of the community. She kept a kosher home, insisted her daughters go to Charleston Hebrew Institute, moved them to Confederate Circle, also known as the Bagel. She rallied her friends to be high-level supporters of Hadassah when she felt there weren't enough people contributing. And she holds the distinction of perhaps being the first advocate for a kitchen renovation, which she expressed, not so subtly, by accidentally driving her car into the kitchen. Thank God she was okay then. Evelyn truly grabbed hold of Judaism to show just how important it was, how dedicated she was to her new family and community. It wasn't always easy. Just as Jacob always felt he had something to prove to his family and others, Evelyn came to Judaism in a time when those who chose Judaism as their religion didn't fit in easily to the Jewish community. Just as our ancestor Jacob, though, dedicated himself to changing his life circumstances, Evelyn truly dedicated her life to being a role model for others, for those who chose Judaism and those who were born into it, showing them what living a life dedicated to and guided by Judaism looked like. In doing so, she went from someone who arrived in the community feeling ostracized to one of the most well-known and beloved people in our community. The other driving value in her life was family. Evelyn and Herb did everything they could to provide for their two beloved daughters, Debra and Clara. A Jewish home and education, of course, and also other joys in life: horseback riding, piano, tap. Not only did they want for nothing, but their mother was a model for them of how to be a strong, dedicated woman who could and did have everything she wanted: a career, a family, a community. The girls' friends would often come over not just to hang out with either one of them, but to spend time with Evelyn, to be in her presence. Because in her presence, everyone, kids especially, felt special. You felt wonderful. You felt loved and accepted. Her tenacity to do for others again came out in full force when her great-nephew was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes. After learning that there was no local Juvenile Diabetes Foundation chapter here in Charleston, Evelyn did exactly what you would expect her to do. She founded the local Low Country JDF chapter. And then, for years afterward, she served as its president, working to find a cure. As she witnessed her own daughters grow, she became a grandmother and inhabited that role for her own grandchildren and for all children. Drawers filled with toys, so that every child left her home with a small token of a new toy. When the Torah speaks of Jacob's death, it does so in the context of his legacy, of the life, of what he leaves behind, of the family that he created. It even hints at the incredible future and nation that family will give rise to. Like our founding ancestor, Evelyn lived a life and made contributions to her community and to her family that have helped transform the future of both. She was truly and deeply loved by the family she married into and the one she helped create. She was and is held in high esteem by her entire extended family and her friends, many for whom she served as a guide in their own lives. All of us, her family, her friends, her synagogue, her community, are grateful for the blessings of her life and will always ensure that her memory, The memory of Chava bat Avram Visara will forever be a blessing. I now have the privilege to call on her daughters to honor their mother's memory. Debbie will be speaking first, followed by Carla.
Thank you, Rabbi, and thank you to all those who came today and those who are watching. I want to begin by thanking our caregivers, Gwen King, Martha Williams, Loretta Scott, Tasia Woodward, Janie Coben, and Edna Frazier. Everyone should be so lucky in their lives to have these wonderful women and them part of them. Gwen, Martha, and Edna have been part of our lives for over 15 years. They've seen the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren grow, but they've been so much more. They were my mother's friends, and they're part of our family. So if you're watching, we love you and we thank you so, so much. So it's only fitting that my mother died during the year of no shivas, no private funerals. Although she deserved all the fanfare in the world, she would not have wanted it. It just wasn't who she was. She simply wanted a life filled with good deeds, helping others, and holding those that she loved close by. In her own practical way, my mother died in 2002, so that we could start 2021 with a fresh start, and that she didn't have to have taxes in 2021, so thank you very much, Mom. But I also want to say that my sister gave her the greatest gift of all, and that she was home from my mother during the last year of her life, so thank you, Carla. My mother was born to very humble beginnings. She was raised on a dairy farm in Columbia. My mother met my father while she was in nursing school there, and he was in law school. For reasons only known to Henry Berlin and my father, they were both asked to leave law school after 2 years. But Henry had nicknamed my mother Snowflake and continued to call her that throughout his life. Mother's decision to marry my father carried many consequences. Although she converted, she felt as though she was shunned by some members of the Jewish community. But my mother showed them by becoming the best Jewish woman that I know. She ensured that Carla and I had a Jewish upbringing. She was involved in every Jewish organization, giving unselfishly of herself and always helping others. As the rabbi said, my mother started the local chapter of the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation to help find a cure, and it was all done because she loved my her great nephew. She and my cousin Roz, they raised thousands and thousands of dollars for the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation to help find a cure for this disease. She was so dedicated to JDF that she gave them our home phone number. Much to our chagrin, that's when everybody had a dial number and only one number. And we had to get a new phone number and tell everybody our new phone. Whether Hadassah, JDF, the synagogue, sisterhood, she was just there to work. She didn't want the spotlight, she just wanted to get the job done. Carla and I rarely saw our dining room table, as it was covered with all of her charitable work. My mother loved Israel, and she loved buying Israeli bonds to support it. When her friend's son was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and my friend was diagnosed with brain cancer, she quietly gave large amounts of money to help find a cure for these diseases. That's just what she did. She showed everyone what a righteous woman truly should be. Mother began working at Roper Hospital when we were young and went on to work in home health care. She was the best nurse, and she loved her patients dearly. There wasn't anything, strays, wild animals, that my mother could not heal. If anyone was injured in the neighborhood, or if anyone in fact found an animal that was injured, they brought it to my mother. My mother pierced every one of my friend's ears, but she had a doctor do my Carla and I's ears. She didn't dare do that. My friend Gail vividly remembers the needle sticking out of her ear sitting at my house, and she even told me that her mother also had her ears pierced the same day. This went on without a glitch until Sherry Berry had a problem and there was no further piercings. In 2006, my mother had a massive stroke. My cousin Steve Goldstein said she's made of grit and determination. and she was determined to come back from the stroke, and she did. I've never witnessed such courage and determination to get well. She worked every day to learn how to speak again and to write, but she did recover. My mother never once complained about anything in life. She was in constant pain in her last years, but she never complained. I think she found there was no use in complaining. My mother doted on her daughters, her grandkids, her great-grandkids, but the greatest act of kindness she showed was that blood is not always thicker than water. Water is not always thicker than blood, whatever the right one is, because she stepped in to fill the role of grandmother when her best friend, Vicki Sherman, died. And she loved all of their families. And also, she also showed me that when I married Newt, that my two family was as important to her as it was to me. So, I have lost a mother, but I will never lose the love you have shown to me and so many others. You taught me compassion, empathy, and that we must give back to the world in order to make a better place for everyone. For all those values that you have instilled in me, I am forever grateful and will continue to live a life filled with tikkun olam, a life that you can be proud of. You taught me well, Mom. I hope you rest in peace, and I hope you know that Joan was waiting for you up there with a piece of chocolate cake as it was her birthday yesterday. Rest in peace, Mom.
My mom was a true pioneer. She came from humble beginnings. Her father, John Waldrop, moved to West Columbia, South Carolina, from North Carolina after being hired by Baptist College to provide milk for their school. Mom lived a country life with cows and lots of dogs, and has always had a little piece of West Columbia in her. Once grown, Mom followed her sister Betty to the Baptist Hospital School of Nursing to become a registered nurse. While in school, Mom decided to rent a room at a boarding house that would forever change her life. As one of the other tenants living there was a handsome, gregarious young man by the name of Herbert Engel. Fate brought them together, but society did its best to pull them apart. You see, Mom was not Jewish, and in 1949, marrying a non-Jew was just not done. So after 7 years of dating, back and forth, Evelyn and Herb tied the knot in 1955. Knowing how important Judaism and his family was to her, Mom drove to Jacksonville, Florida every other weekend to study conversion with a conservative rabbi, as there were no other rabbis in the immediate area who would marry them. Only a pioneer would have managed the new terrain that Mom was entering. Mom's conversion class only had one student, her, and neither Mom or her dad knew of anyone who had converted to Judaism. But Mom, being the pioneer that she is, held her head up high and embraced Judaism with both hands. Only my sister and I will know the sacrifices she made to make a Jewish home for us. A less formidable person would never have the strength to do so. But once Mom committed to do something, game over. She became a regular fixture at Synagogue Sisterhood Emanu-El, National Council of Jewish Women, Ort, Hadassah. She volunteered to help in many ways, but she's most celebrated as the keeper of the Emanu-El grams, all handwritten for over 30 years. As Debbie mentioned, our dining room table while we were growing up was always littered with stamps and envelopes and Emanu-El grams. Mom finally relinquished control of her beloved Emanu-El grams in 2006 after her stroke. It took a lot of convincing to ensure Mom that someone else in some contraption called a computer could keep her Emanu-El grams straight. Mom was a pioneer as a working mom. She enjoyed her work and decided to continue nursing after Debbie and I started school. After many years of working for Roper Hospital, Mom changed career paths and became a home health care nurse. Mom turned into a real-life Florence Nightingale, who would spend countless unpaid hours helping her patients throughout the Charleston area. Mom was a pioneer in surrogacy. when Mom's dear friend, Mickey Sherman, died. Unexpectedly leaving behind a toddler grandchild. Mom stepped up to the plate and adopted her. Stacy and later Molly spent many weekends with Grandma, and she loved every minute of it. She soon became available and very popular for weekend stays with her other Tyler relatives. I remember once calling Mom to tell her that baby Henley and I were going to surprise her and come visit that weekend. I heard hesitancy in her voice until she sheepishly admitted that Taylor and Blake were already on the schedule, but assured me that she would be able to reschedule for a later date. There were many happy sleepovers in our house in those days. Mom always had a soft spot for little ones. To this day, she has pictures of 3-year-old Jackson, 4-year-old Mia, and horribly outdated photos of Alex and Sam, Jane and Annie, Justin and Nicole, all over her house. Photos of Jack were jimmied in all 4 corners of her television screen to the point where we could not watch TV anymore. There's no way she was going to relinquish her cherished photos of her little ones. And once her own grandchildren arrived, Mom went totally gaga. She would travel and do anything to get her hands on Henley and Jake. I remember once when Henley was 1 and Steve Era were going out of town, Mom flew to Baltimore that morning, where she met Henley and I, and flew back to Charleston on the next flight that afternoon. If it takes a village to raise a child, then that village was Mom. Mom was a pioneer in the nonprofit area. After her great-nephew was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes, Mom called to see how she could help. When she discovered that there was no JDF chapter in Charleston, what else does a pioneer do but start one herself? Mom had absolutely no idea how to start a chapter, but this didn't stop her from doing what needed to be done. The JDF chapter in Charleston formation was due to the dedication of one courageous woman, Evelyn Engel. But the best story about Mom and her connection with JDF concerned a certain phone number of ours. You see, once Mom founded the JDF chapter, our home phone number, 7660385, I'm sure many of you know that, also became JDF's office number. And when Mom decided in 2005 to move to a condo, the phone company informed her that the 7660385 number could no longer be used as a residence and a business phone. A choice had to be made as to whether to keep our phone number or to get a new phone number. And I think you know which way that went. Forget the fact that dozens of our friends and family knew our home phone number by heart, or the fact we'd used this phone number for over 40 years. Mom didn't miss a beat and replied, "Assign my home a new number." You see, Mom's concern was always about others, and she worried that a mother who had called JDF many years ago may be in need again, and when calling the 7660385 number, would discover that it was no longer in service, and would have nowhere to go and no one to talk to. Despite our strong consternations, Debbie and I never had a chance, and boy were our friends pissed. But for Mom, our family and friends may be inconvenienced for a little while, but a family with a diabetic child should never go unaided. But the bottom line is that my mom has lived a blessed life. She's touched many lives and hearts with her generosity and pioneer spirit. She's loved by many friends and family. The truth is that Mom should never have been here this long. Death had visited her before, but being the stubborn pioneer she is, she turned her back and said no. Mom needed to be here for Henley's bat mitzvah, Jake's bar mitzvah, then Dad's illness. She point blank told Debbie shortly after Dad's death that she couldn't leave us to take care of Dad. That's Mom in a nutshell. Forget about the excruciating back pain, the damaged heart that skipped beats, the speech that took all of her strength to get out, the hips that were crippled with bursitis and arthritis. Mom was a force to be reckoned with and has always called the shots. Until now. And even now, how can you rail against Father Time for taking her from us, when we've been so blessed to have our mother with us for 93 years. So Mom, all of your family and friends have come together to tell you how much we love you and we'll miss you, how lucky we have been to have you in our lives. You'll always be our role model and our partner.
rise to say the El Maleh Rachamim prayer, the prayer that helps escort Evelyn's soul from this world into the next. El Maleh Rachamim Shochen Baromin Hametzeh Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShchina B'ma'alot Kedoshim Etorim Kezorakia Mazirim Et Nishmat Chava Bat Avram V'Sara Shalcha Le'olama Gan Eden Tia Menuchata Ana Bal Rachamim Hastireha B'Seter Kanfecha Le'olamim Utzoror B'Tzor HaChaim Et Nishmataha Adonai Unachalataha V'Tanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkava V'Nomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Chava Bat Avram V'Sara, Evelyn Engel, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. We're seated for a moment. The final act that we have an obligation to do for Evelyn, the final act that we can do to honor her, is to physically bury her body, to place earth into the grave. And so we'll do that now. We'll ask the family to come up first to perform this mitzvah, this act, followed by everyone else here who would like to take part in that mitzvah, in this ritual. We place, each individual is meant to place at least 3 shovelfuls of earth into the grave, and for one of them we use the back of the shovel. Similarly to how we stopped 7 times on our way up here, we use the back of the shovel because it symbolizes that this moment isn't easy, that it feels off balance, off kilter, that it's not right. But we do this, again, because it's where we are emotionally with you, with the family, but also because it's not an easy moment. So we'll call Carla and Debbie and Stephen Newt first, and then we'll ask everyone else. Please, if you choose to come up, just remember, please, to keep distance between each other as we go from person to person. You can place the shovels back into the pile of earth just as they are now. 2 lines. There's on this side as well. Please remember just to keep space. That's appropriate.